Proverbs chapter 3 is where we're going to be tonight. Sorry for that slight delay. We're going to be in the first 12 verses of Proverbs chapter 3. He says, "My son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart, for they will prolong your life many years and bring you peace and prosperity. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your bodies and nourishment to your bones. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves, as a father the son he delights in." All right. Tonight we're going to be talking about the marks of wisdom. You know, Jeff Foxworthy has his famous stand-up bit, "You might be a redneck if..." Well, I'm not going to do this tonight, so don't worry. I would be, at one time I would have been, right there with, "You might be a redneck if." That would have applied to me somewhat. Not so much since I live up here in the Midwest anymore. Weird. Anyway, but if you watch Duck Dynasty, you might be a redneck. Anyway, gonna get into it. But I love what Jeff Foxworthy has to say about this. You might be a redneck if. Everybody has certain markers, certain features, certain things about them that you can instantly recognize. If I look out the room and I recognize your faces. I recognize the features on your physical body. I've seen them before. I'm familiar with them. I can recognize them right off the bat. And nobody else has your face. Nobody else has your fingerprints. But while it might be easy to actually disguise yourself and make yourself look different on the outside, change your clothing, change your physical appearance somewhat, change your face even through cosmetic surgery, or for some of us just shaving our beards, that would give us a whole new look. The one thing about yourself that is the hardest to change is your gait. No, not your front entry gait, but the way you walk, the way you carry yourself. For instance, the way I walk across stage. For some reason, nobody else has my gait. Nobody else has yours. It is the way you walk is almost as distinctive about you as your thumbprint. For instance, I had friends when I was at Harding. Harding is a pretty big campus, so you'd see somebody from across campus and it would be a good couple hundred yards. But I had friends that even though I might not be able to see their face, I didn't know what they were wearing that day, I could still tell it was them by the way they were walking to class. I could instantly tell it was them just by the way they walked. And that is really hard to change consciously. Everybody has their distinctive features about them. One of the things we liked to do when we were overseas in Greece for a semester, when we were in the big shopping area there, called the Plaka. The Plaka is like downtown Athens. It's like the flea market set up, the place where you go to buy all your souvenirs and stuff. And everywhere you go, you're stepping on like historical landmarks, things that are just thousands of years old. It's crazy. But it was a really cool part of town, a big tourist area. Lots of people from all over the world come to that part of Athens especially. It was one of the safer parts of Athens too. But that's where we would hang out a lot, especially on the weekends and on Sunday afternoons before evening church. And we would always play the game, Spot the American, which got a lot easier to do the longer we were there. Spot the American. Now, if any of you have ever been traveling overseas, especially to Europe, especially places, in Eastern Europe, especially in the Mediterranean region, you know there are certain things you can do to help yourself blend in and not stand out so much. Some people didn't do that. They told us beforehand, as we were preparing to leave the country, they told us certain things to avoid. For instance, ball caps and tennis shoes are a dead giveaway. Wearing shorts but white socks midway up your calf is also a dead giveaway. Fanny packs are a dead giveaway, especially if you call it a fanny pack. That has a very different meaning in much of the rest of the world. If you ever go to, especially the United Kingdom, do not ask for a fanny pack. They will give you the strangest look. I won't go into what it means, but you can probably guess. But we played Spot the American, and there were two instances that we were playing this game that really stuck out to me. And one time, we were walking down the road, and across the street from us, we saw these two ladies, kind of heavyset, older, graying hair. They had it all. They had the shorts, the tall white socks. They had, the caps, the fanny packs, and a map out. That's a dead giveaway too. But even more than that, they were loud. That's another dead giveaway. They were loud. Loud enough that we could hear them from the other side of the road. And they had a very southern accent. So as they were walking along, looking at the map with each other, they were saying, "Is this Syntagma Square?" Like, really deep southern accent. Like, oh man, they don't stand a chance. Another time, and this might hit closer to home with some of you, one guy was like, "Oh, you're not even trying, dude." He was another elderly man, but extremely tall. Probably 6'5", 6'6", somewhere in there. Stood out like a sore thumb. But even more than that, not just his height, not just the very pale skin that you don't see much in Greece, and the way he was dressed. He had a bright green John Deere trucker hat. Could you be any more obvious, right? So here we are playing Spot the American, and so we've got kind of this stereotypical American tourist thing in our mind, the camera around your neck, the tall socks, the fanny packs, I love this guy riding the mullet, if you can see that, that's hilarious. Anyway, Spot the American. There are certain things about you that, you might not even be thinking of, but they point you out in a crowd. They make you distinct. They separate you from all the others. And sometimes it's good. Sometimes, though, it can be very bad. Sometimes even dangerous. And as we read through Proverbs, chapter 3, he's giving instruction to his son as to how to be wise. But if you take some of these things and flip them on end, and instead of taking a positive instruction, turning it sort of to a negative, like a don't be like this, the opposite of wisdom is foolishness. So he's instructing his son how to be wise. But if we take it from another angle, how not to be a fool, I think some of these things will stand out a little bit better. How to spot the fool. So let's play a little game. How to spot the fool. Think about this. Have you ever seen anybody in your life that meets these criteria, that you can see these things and instantly spot the fool, so to speak? We probably wouldn't call him a fool, because that's not very nice, but we all think it, right? All right, first one. How to spot the fool. They don't listen to good advice, especially from their parents. Especially from their parents. They don't listen to good advice. 2, the fool remains in relationships only as long as there is some benefit to them. You ever known anybody like that? I have. I'm going to spot the fool. The fool relies only on their own instincts and feelings to navigate life. They just do what feels right. Number 4, the fool lives by their own truth and their own wisdom, whatever works best for them. I've seen a lot of that too. Number 5, how to spot the fool. The fool is always chasing after the next big thing, the latest fashions, the newest gadgets. They're never satisfied with what they have. They're always wanting something more, something better, something different, something new. They can't just be content with what they have. Finally, how to spot the fool. The 6th thing, the fool lacks self-discipline, but gets defensive in the face of criticism. If you try to correct them, they lash out at you. How many of you have known somebody that kind of fits this criteria? Any hands? Yeah, someone like, ooh, I do. I got a teenage daughter that's like that one. And here's a tougher question. How many of you ever spotted the fool inside yourself? I have. Not listening to advice, trusting your own gut feelings on things instead of really laying it out and seeing what the best path might be to take. Always chasing after the latest and greatest. Yeah, I've been there. I've spotted the fool in my own life. So how do we prevent ourselves from sticking out like a sore thumb, so to speak, when it comes to being a fool? Would you rather stick out for being a fool, or would you rather be recognized for being wise and embodying wisdom in yourself and in your actions? Well, that's what Proverbs can help us do. So we're going to look at some of these a little bit more in depth here. The marks of wisdom. What's going to separate you out as a wise person? Now, I'm taking these a little bit out of order, but you'll see why later. The wise person, the wise man, the wise woman, how to spot them. The first way to spot them is they're wise by God's standards. They don't define their own wisdom. They don't define their own truth. They are wise by God's standard and definition of what wisdom is. Look at this again, verses 7 and 8 of chapter 3. He says, "Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones." You see, there are two kinds of wisdom, actually. There's wisdom that's from the world, and there's wisdom that's from God. If you remember back to your James study that went on for a while, hopefully you should have this memorized by now. James chapter 3, verses 13 through 18. James points out these two types of wisdom. He says, "Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in humility. That comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness." A wise person does not define his or her own wisdom. There are two kinds of wisdom, earthly wisdom, godly wisdom. Which are you going to choose? Earthly wisdom that you define by your own terms, or godly wisdom that's defined for you? Well, in Proverbs he says, this will, not being wise in your own eyes, but being wise in the sight of God, will bring you health to your body and nourishment to your bones. Earthly wisdom is kind of like junk food. It looks good. It tastes good. I only wish that chocolate-covered donut were good for me. Right? I mean, there's a difference between being good and being good for you. You're not going to get much nourishment. In fact, if I start off a morning with, half a dozen donuts, because I can't just stop at one, of course, and you eat two, you might as well eat three, and three you're halfway to six, so, might as well eat. Anyway, I'm hungry like an hour and a half later. And not just hungry, I feel weak, I feel tired, I feel just bleh. But if I start off the day with toast with blackberry jam, and a side of eggs, and my morning coffee, and an apple, that energizes me till lunch. That sticks with me, that keeps me going throughout the day. Earthly wisdom is like junk food, but it's all over the place. It's so easy to get, it's so easy to chew and swallow and, just do your own thing, do what feels good, have a blast. But no, the true wise person understands that godly wisdom is the only wisdom that matters. Godly wisdom is the only wisdom that's going to really nourish and feed your soul. So the first mark of a wise person, the first way to spot them is that they're not wise by their own standards. The second mark of a wise person is that intimate relationships are important. Read with me again, Proverbs 3, verses 3 and 4. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. Love and faithfulness. Don't let them leave you. Now, is that love and faithfulness towards God, or is it love and faithfulness towards your fellow man? Yes, it's both. Intimate relationships with both God and with man are important to the wise person. They don't just toss relationships out the window. They don't just stick around as long as it's going to be beneficial to them. But here's the thing. And let me see a show of hands. How many of you think that a lack of loyalty in relationships is a problem today? Maybe you look around and say, yeah, there's not much loyalty in relationships anymore. All right, put your hands down. Now, how many of you would consider yourself a loyal friend? Let me see the show of hands. Okay, so there's something off. There's something off. If we look around and we see just loyalty lacking in relationships across the board, and yet we look at ourselves and think, well, I'm a loyal person in relationships, then one of those two things is wrong. And I think some of us, especially the younger generation, it's really hard for us to keep those good, intimate, close relationships going. It really is. But there's a problem, because most people would consider themselves loyal and faithful in relationships, both to God and with their friends and family. And I think it has to, but there's a problem, because loyalty is lacking, and I agree with you that raise your hand. But there's a problem, especially today, especially among our younger generation. It's a problem called unfriending. How many of you have ever used that word in a conversation or thought about doing it? Unfriending. Who's here? Yeah. Especially if you're on Facebook, right? Those of you who are on Facebook, you probably, every so often, I have to do this too. I have to go through my friends list and decide, do I really want to keep them on my friends list or not? Or do I want to unfriend them? It's so easy to do these days. And it's really easy to do online, but it seems like it's even easier to do in real life. You unfriend somebody just by, not by anything, not right through like a big explosion, a big falling out, a huge to-do, but just by not caring anymore. Not calling, not visiting. Love doesn't need hate to ruin relationships. Love just needs apathy to ruin relationships. Let's look at what 1 John tells us. 1 John 4, 7 and 8. Dear friends, let us love one another. For love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. Intimate relationships should be important. This gathering right here, both Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, throughout the week, wherever we are, the church is supposed to embody and model this type of intimate relationship that we have with each other, based on love through Jesus Christ, because God is love, so we should love each other. We shouldn't just throw relationships to the side. We shouldn't just get rid of them on a whim just because somebody made us mad, somebody made us upset, somebody said a comment off the cuff, and we took it the wrong way. And so we don't speak to them again. The opposite of love is not necessarily hate. The opposite of love is apathy. Just not caring. Are we really going to be loving people, or are we going to be just apathetic towards our relationships? So, the marks of wisdom so far. Wise by God's standards. Intimate relationships are important. Third, they share wealth. I'm going to have to kind of hurry through these. They share wealth. Look with me again. Proverbs 3, verses 9 and 10. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim with new wine. A wise person does not get sucked into the trap of materialism. They make a habit of sharing and giving things away. So often it's easy for us in this world to get into this trap of materialism. And a really good definition of what materialism is when I talk about it is materialism is buying things you don't need with money you don't have to impress people you don't like. And that's not my own. I've heard from Dave Ramsey and Steve Diggs and lots of other financial people out there will tell you that's an easy way to fall not only into debt, but also just putting up this lie of a lifestyle. A lifestyle where you're all about consuming and getting and buying as much as you can. Well, the wise person, according to Proverbs, makes a habit of sharing his wealth, both with God and with man. Honoring God with your first fruits. That's, giving to the church, giving to God, but it's also giving to others, those who are in need. Sharing your wealth. Luke 6, verse 38. Jesus tells this. He says, give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it'll be measured to you. The wise person shares his wealth. He doesn't just hoard his wealth. He's generous both to God and to others. Fourthly, the wise person is disciplined. We don't really like that word, do we? Discipline? Ooh, it brings back memories of spankings and timeouts and go to your room, no TV, horrible, my life is over. But look what he says here in Proverbs 3, 11 and 12. He says, my son, do not despise the Lord's discipline and do not resent his rebuke. Because the Lord disciplines those he loves as a father, the son he delights in. I'm only disciplining you because I love you. Yeah, right. I mean, that's what we think at the moment. We don't like discipline. We don't like being disciplined. But the result is very much needed. And I think it's very much so lacking today. I look out, especially in my generation, and I see a generation of undisciplined people. Undisciplined men and women. That doesn't mean, we're doomed because their parents didn't spank them. That's not exactly what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about they don't have the discipline to get up in the morning. They don't have the discipline to go to work on time, to present themselves, in an okay fashion. I mean, some of you are thinking, well, your shirt's untucked and you're wearing jeans, that's not okay. Well, this is better than some people, right? But I'm just getting myself off the hook with that one. But they don't have the discipline to hold to those commitments and those relationships, to do the things they say they're going to do. And I'm the same way. I mean, I'm not exempting myself from that by any means. I could use some more self-discipline in my life. But the Lord disciplines those he loves. And we all need to be a little bit more self-disciplined. Look what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 9, 25 through 27. He says, everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I don't fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. Folks, there's no easy way out. My generation, younger generations, we always are looking for the easy way out, the easy road. How can we do this more simply? Well, when it comes to self-discipline, there's no easy way. Just like when it comes to playing sports, football, baseball, whatever, there's no easy way. And those that try to take the easy way out and use performance-enhancing drugs will inevitably get caught and have their whole reputation tarnished. And they'll be put to shame publicly because we don't like cheaters. There's no way to cheat your way through to discipline. It takes commitment. It takes effort. The fool is always looking for the easy way out. The wise person isn't afraid to fight that tough road toward self-discipline. Fifth, marks of wisdom. They are obedient. Listen to Proverbs 3, 1 and 2. My son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart. For they will prolong your life for many years and bring you peace and prosperity. They're obedient. Look what we see, the example of Jesus in Luke chapter 2. This is after Jesus kind of stayed behind in Jerusalem and while his parents went away, and they're frantic searching for him, and they finally find him. And he says, "Why were you looking for me?" "Oh, you were concerned? Why?" I love that. Jesus. I would be so frustrated. "Why were you searching for me?" he asked. "Didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house?" But they did not understand what he was saying to them. But then he went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. But his mother treasured all these things in his heart. And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. Okay, since you're sort of the younger ones, I'm talking to myself too. The only teenager who could have legitimately said, "I know better than my parents," didn't. And you can remind your children and your grandchildren that later. The only person that could have legitimately said, "Mom, Dad, you don't know what you're talking about," didn't. I mean, he did say, I got to be about my father's business, but then he went home and was about his earthly father's business. And he was obedient to them. He didn't raise a fuss. He didn't raise a stink. He just went home and was obedient to them. He learned from their instruction. We're told later in Hebrews, that Jesus learned obedience through the things he suffered. We're obedient. The marks of a wise person is they're willing to listen to others, their advice and the instruction of others. The fool, not so much. They think they know it all. And the only one that really did know it all didn't make a fuss about it. He was obedient. Finally, the last mark of wisdom. Some of you are like, "Oh goodness, we're already 5 over." The last mark of wisdom is the wise person is motivated by faith. Motivated by faith. Look at this. 3, 5, and 6. 3 verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. In all your ways, no matter what it is, submit to God. If you want to go one way, God wants you to go the other, submit to God. Because we walk by faith, not by sight, as we're told in the letter to Corinthians. We walk by faith, not by sight. The wise person is motivated by faith. Not just by their own gut feelings, not by their own instincts. They're motivated by their faith in God, who they truly believe that he is looking out for them. He has their best interest in mind. He knows what's going on more than anybody else. So I'm going to trust God. I'm going to walk by faith, even if I don't understand it. Again, the example of Jesus comes to mind. This is Jesus in the garden the night before he's going to be crucified. He's praying to God. He says, going a little further, he fell on his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." In all your ways, submit to God. And just a little bit after that, when they were coming to arrest him, and his disciples tried to defend him, he said, do you think I can't call on my Father, and he'll at once send at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled and say it must happen this way? He could have easily, as the song goes, called 10,000 angels to come and just wipe them all out, but he didn't. In all his ways, he submitted to God because he knew God's plan was best. God's will was worth following. He didn't go on his own gut instincts, his own feelings, because that would have led him in the opposite direction of the cross. He knew what had to be done, and it was following God's will. He was motivated by faith, not by sight, not by feelings, not by his senses, but by faith. The marks of wisdom. Wise by God's standards. Intimate relationships are important. They share wealth. They're disciplined. They're obedient. They're motivated by faith. I look around the world today and I think we need a little bit more wisdom. Not just knowledge, not just understanding, not just facts and statistics. We need wisdom, people. We need more people that are willing to embody this type of lifestyle, the lifestyle of wisdom. Because Jesus did. As you've seen from some of these New Testament passages, the life of Jesus perfectly embodies this picture of wisdom. And that's why he, at the end of his life, he could legitimately say, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. And nobody comes to the Father except through me. Way, truth, life, that's wisdom language. Jesus was the embodiment of wisdom on earth. He came to show us how it's done. He came to show us these 6 things and more about what it means to be wise. And folks, I think we need more people like this. I think your children, your grandchildren need to hear this message. I think we all need to hear the message from Proverbs chapter 3. And may we all embody this type of wisdom so that when people see us, they spot a wise person, not a fool. So how do we make this wisdom more of a reality in our own lives? It's becoming more like Jesus. Becoming more like Jesus. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you so much for the blessing of today. We thank you for this message from Proverbs. Lord, we thank you for telling us what it means to be wise, but not just telling us, but showing us through your Son, Jesus Christ. And it is my prayer that each and every person in this room and in this church will become more like Jesus. That we will become people of wisdom. That we won't be more like the world, but we'll be more like your Son. And it's only through your strength and your power and your grace that we can even hope to achieve that, Father. And bless us this week with wisdom. It's through your Son's name we pray. Amen.